scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. It's Tuesday, April 5th, 2016 at 7 p.m. And if you'd all join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Randy, please.
Okay. Chair. Trustee Truscott.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Here.
Trustee Pompo.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard. Township Legal Counsel Roger Zappa. Superintendent of Public Works Kirk Page is here. Committee members present is Dave Wiegand from Planning, Recreation, and Roads. And Mary Davis is the Township Advisory Council representative from Marquette Township.
Thanks. We're all set to get going. First item is the consent agenda, which typically includes items such as the approval of the minutes from March 15th, received committee and other reports, including the Planning Commission approved minutes from February 10th, Road Committee agenda for April 5th, Fire Chief, Fire Marshal report from February, Fire Department activity report from February, Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority draft minutes from March 16th, and correspondence not requiring board action includes a letter to Governor Snyder from Manager Gerard regarding reappointment. That would be Mr. Aboud for the Michigan Tax Tribunal. And bills payable, checks in the amount of $203,701.41, and the financial statements and Treasury's report of February. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda unless somebody wants to pull something out?
One correction. On page 4, there's a correction in the consent. I'm not the treasurer. You advanced me, Randy.
On
Page 4.
the minutes.
Yeah, in the minutes on page 4.
Okay, we can fix that.
Good. Thanks. Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye?
All opposed? Thank you. I'm sorry, you're going to have to deal with my allergies again tonight. Then I need approval of the agenda, unless somebody wants to.
So moved. Second.
And then second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Okay, public comment. Anybody'd like to address the board? You're welcome to come up to the podium, name and address. Tell us what's on your mind.
Dave Wiegand, 350 Brookton Road, and on the road committee, I'm here for answer any questions you might have on 9A, although I can't think of any, and I'd like to reserve time on item 9B.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else?
Mark Davatilla, UP Engineers and Architects, here for the update on item 9A.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else? Okay. Board member comment. Anybody want to share anything or ask questions, or? I have a bunch of stuff to share, so I'll be last. Keith?
All right, just want everyone to mark their calendar for June 25th from 11 to 3. We're going to have the car show this year. Location will be announced later, but just mark down June 25th, Saturday from 11 to 3, car show.
That's at the mall again, right?
No, that's we're going to be announced later.
Oh, okay.
We have a meeting tomorrow at 11.
Okay.
Also that we started our recycling. You're going to cover that, Randy, at all? Just to, Kirk is going to cover that, so I won't. That started this week, so rigid fiber. So We did have our, meet our reps for the county and any township officials and people interested here on April 1st. We have 41 people attending that I could keep track of. I had some sign-ups, I missed some, but we have 41. We had some good discussions for 2 hours, so went over pretty good. We're going to set one more up. I don't know, I'll have to work it out with them when I can get them back again, so probably before the election. Also, for the board members and offices, on May 7th, the Marquette County Township Association is going to have a banquet in the Ishmael Elks Club, so mark that on your calendar. And the rest I'll take care of later. Thank you.
Anybody else? Randy?
Okay, I got a few items to cover. We've got an election coming up on May 3rd. It'll be a school millage election. If you haven't registered to vote as of today, you can't vote in that election. It's past the date now. April 19th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, is the last day for at 4 o'clock for anyone wanting to run for township office. You're going to get a packet here, and you need to get some signatures on your form, and it has to be back by the 19th. And that's just for party candidates for Republican or Democrat. If you are going to run as an independent, that date slides into July. July 21 is your date. If you want to run for the board as an independent, you go straight to the November election. And at the Planning Commission last week, we talked a little bit. We didn't talk as much about the design standards. We did not have a full board, so we did not talk much about that. But it was a quick meeting, and we did talk about some other, as I look at the agenda from the last planning, we did talk about some more zoning situations out in towards Lowe's in that area, about how to zone that so it fits those businesses out there, so we're not spot zoning and such. So we had a little discussion about that, and that'll probably be coming to the board in the near future. And then other than that, we just had a few reports about the DDA the DDA proposed expansion and the corridor study and conceptual plan that's going to happen in a few years from now. So. And that's it for me.
Anybody else have anything? John? Nothing? Dan? Nothing, Ernie? Okay. Well, we kind of had 3 weeks off between meetings, so I had a few things going on. We did have a meeting. We've had a couple actually on the road project, and Mark's going to give us an update on that. They kind of expect or hope, because of the storm stuff, to start May 6th and actually be finished by June 17th on the second phase of our project. It's really, well, I'm not going to get into the bonding part of it right now, but it's a pretty aggressive schedule, and I asked them if they thought that they were going to have any problems with that, and they said they didn't think so, but again, it's up to Mother Nature. And I did ask Mark to give me some numbers to try to give people an idea what the value is to what we're doing. And I said, if the average lot in Trowbridge is 60 feet wide, what is that costing to just do right in front of somebody's house, that's 60 feet? And he said $3,600. So think about that's just one little part of it. You can see why the cost is so high if you're talking about one residence, one small residence. $3,600. That's quite an impact. And then again, that's on the agenda, so we'll be talking about that later. I also did my first board of review, which consisted of about 3 or 4 meetings, a couple of them most of the day. And that gives residents a chance. It's the time of the year in March where they can come in and talk to what would you say? It's an elected board, it's an appointed board, but it's not the board. I'm there as secretary because that's part of my job, but there are 3 community members who make up the board. And if you have questions, we didn't have a lot of people come in. There were a couple issues with statements that went out on the taxes because of the software company that we use. So there were a lot of questions that were already answered prior to anybody coming in. But it was a really interesting process to go through, to hear people come in and talk about, you know, if they think they're getting taxed on a part of their land that they don't own or someone else owns or something. But that's the time for the public, one of the times that they can come in and talk about their tax bill and see if there needs to be an adjustment. Maybe you're gonna homestead where you couldn't before, or something like that. So that's just more information for you in case anybody, not that you can't come into the township anytime and ask a question, but that's set aside specifically for the residents. And then we talked about this before a little bit about looking at your tax bills, and we realized that some people have escrowed taxes and they don't see their tax bills. So I encourage you to get a hold of it and see what it looks like. But I want to just remind you that the township only has 3 millages that we ask for. I don't know, you could kind of count the Heritage Trail as one of them because that's all municipalities in the county. But we've got the road millage that you know for $1.50. Operations is 4.9, and fire is 2.5. So if you know, we had one gentleman come in and say, my taxes are going up. Ours aren't going up. The township is not raising your taxes. It's all of the extraneous things that are on the bills. And I just kind of wanted to point that out because people don't realize that, especially if they don't see their bills. There's more and more millages, and Randy's gonna get us a list when that is available of how many are gonna be on this ballot next year, or this year. The County Township Association also met. A couple of us went to that, and they talked about building codes, and it was just more of a discussion type thing. One of the items that came up was some legislation that Senator Casperson has in, and we were all kind of not sure what he was trying to do, and like Pete said, we did have some of the legislators here last week, and they cleared some of that up for us. So we're working hard at trying to get a lot of information on what's going on out there for everybody, just so everybody knows where their tax dollars are going, what we're doing, and I think that's important. The other meeting I attended was the Cliffs Natural Resources closing announcement breakfast, and of course that's already old news, but some of the things that the CEO was talking about were kind of interesting. It was a quick, like an hour-and-a-half breakfast, I guess. The gentleman said that 100% of the problems that Cliffs was having was because of the board, and I understand that the whole board was replaced and his predecessor was replaced, and he's kicking it, so he's going to get everything in line. But he actually blamed Australia and the fact that they're enabling China to export cheap steel to the U.S. That was the biggest contributor, he said, to why that particular mine closed. Evidently, they have suitor plants, which is similar to iron ore. And they're the ones, if you've seen anything over in China, you'd see the pollution that's going on. That's what's causing the pollution. And he said actually when they have an event, they have to shut those plants down for up to 2 weeks prior to try to clear the air out because nobody will come and visit them for any kind of event. I remember they did that with the Olympics. They had to shut it all down like 2 weeks and stop production. But Cliffs wanted, one of the things he wanted to point out was that they're the lowest cost producer of pellets in the world. And they run from $50 to $55 a ton. And I got a whole bunch more notes, but I also did bring the book, and I'm gonna leave it in the township office, their financials. If anybody in the township's interested in looking at it, I did bring it. We also had our chamber supervisor meeting, which is what I've been calling it, where it started with the chamber when we agreed to join the new Marquette Chamber. One of the things that was important to me and what was the reason I supported joining the chamber was to have them facilitate meetings with other communities. And Jason Schneider's done a really good job of that. And the three supervisors, well, the mayor supervisor, me, and Chocolate's supervisor get together and once a month and just, we don't have an agenda, we just talk, whatever current events or whatever we think. And then Jason a few months ago suggested that I bring 2 other board members. So I've been trying to kind of rotate it up. We've got a couple who haven't participated, but it's a good casual discussion. And what we've been trying to do is figure out Jason keeps saying, what's the low-hanging fruit? What could we do as 3 communities that are so connected to, and I don't even know to what end, to work on or to pursue or whatever. We really haven't come up with anything yet. But the discussion's good. We talked about the BLP increase. We talked about a rec authority a little bit. We talked about traffic flow and zoning. And we just haven't really gotten anything yet. But we're going to keep meeting, and I think that's important for us to keep that dialogue going. We also had our library committee meeting, because remember, we haven't been here in 3 weeks. And that's on the agenda, so we'll talk about that later. And there have been a couple letters floating around in the township about, or no, I shouldn't say in the township, in the county, from the county, about the tax tribunal and Lowe's and all of that. We know that we've, as it was in the correspondence tonight, we had Manager Gerard type of a letter about the Abood appointment, and the county sent out a letter, and then another letter went out, and I was asked to sign it, and I just want you to know that I didn't sign it. It was on county letterhead. Jerry Corkin signed it, the chair of the county commission, and 6 or 7 others signed it, and it was asking Lowe's to come to the community, and they need to be a good steward, and this board hadn't really talked about that and how, if we were going to take a stand or take an approach or write a letter, do anything. So I didn't sign it. I just want you to know that I didn't and why. And, if you think I should have or not, but just in case, this is a small community. A lot of people talk. But that's why I didn't, because it hadn't come before this board, and I wasn't about to commit the township or the 7 of us or legal or staff or anybody for something we hadn't talked about. So I just wanted to point that out. And then lastly was the representatives. I thought it did go very well. Pete gets the kudos for setting that up. He did a great job. Had the tables all set up and made sure that they got here, got everything that they needed. And it was just it was designed for us county officials, whether it was the county board or the mayor or, the city commissioners, planning commissioners, whatever. He was trying to get as many as he could together. And we did talk for almost a couple hours, and Senator Casperson was here, Representative Kivla, Representative McBroom, and Representative Deonda was at home. He had a family issue, so he didn't make it. But I did email them after, Pete, and asked them if they could try to look at us for September, maybe sometime before the election. And I asked Casperson if he would be willing or be able to do, it's a little harder for him, he's farther away, to do this twice a year so that our officials can find out what's going on. They answered well over 10 questions. We had really good dialogue back and forth and a lot of good explanations of stuff. And then one of the things that Representative Kivla brought up was, maybe I don't have it here. He handed out a flyer, and actually I saw it on an email tonight too from somebody else. The money that the townships is getting from the government, the sharing that we're supposed to be getting, is dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped over the years. And this is, and I think, John, you might be able to zoom in on this. This is the one that Representative Kivla handed out. It says, growth in municipal general revenue for the last 10 years. And I think Treasurer Johnson's touched on this, too, a few times. This one over here is Hawaii. That means that they're getting more governmental support in their communities, and this is townships, villages, cities, in the last 10 years than anybody. Can you see Michigan down here? We're in the negative. We're the only red ones on the whole chart. It's pretty telling that our revenues as municipalities has been cut drastically. And the email I got today said 59% just recently. So we're making do with what we can. And another article I found too from the Detroit Free Press is about infrastructure, and we're going to give Kirk permission to do some more work tonight. And this reporter says, I've been sitting here for hours trying to find the right words to convey how important it is to invest in cities, in infrastructure, and in the essential government services that keep us safe and healthy. And she says, but I can't. I'll put readers to sleep with statistics. But it is important for us to keep our water lines going and our utilities going, and our infrastructure is so important, fixing the roads, and you've seen what we've done with them, and I think it's a great partnership. UPEA has worked diligently, pain and dole, and they've done a great job trying to figure out how to save money and do this efficiently and not have us have to go back to the roads again, in 2 or 3 years. It's a great plan, and we got to give the road committee kudos also for their hard work and research in this. So we are working hard to make sure that we can all keep working hard, I guess. So that's enough. Yes, sir.
You commented myself on the meeting on revenue. The question I brought up to the representatives, not only this time, I did 2 years ago too, revenue sharing for townships. Actually, for any municipality, if you don't have 7,800 residents, you get nothing, literally nothing. It's all above. So the only municipality in the Upper Peninsula that I'm aware of is the city of Marquette. I don't know about Ironwood or Sioux or that, if they're over that limit or not. As of right now, the only one I know of is the city of Marquette that gets any revenue sharing at all. Everyone else is gone. You don't get it in that. So I brought it up again 2 years ago. I brought up this one. They don't want to talk about it in that. So
They're spending the money elsewhere.
money's going someplace else in that, so. That's it.
Any other comments? I threw a lot at you, Pete.
Lynn, just to follow up on that meeting with the representative, the towns and townships that were here were Marquette Township, Marquette City, Negaunee, Champion, Ishpeming, Harvey, Scandia, Powell, and Iron Mountain. They were the ones there.
Yeah, so if we can do that a couple times a year, spring and fall, I think that would be awesome.
I'll talk to Jim from Marquette County Township, and I'll set it up with
Sure, he
him.
helped with that too. Okay, onward. Unfinished business. Local roads rehab update. Do you want to start with that, Mark?
All right, just clarify that meeting on Monday, just to complete the 2015. Remember last year how they left off. So Randy, Lynn, myself, and Dave Nolan met concerning the 2015 streets that were postponed, and they gave us a schedule. And first item is we're gonna be fixing the driveways along Erickson, Vanderboom, and Allen. Any of the ones that were just temporarily patched, they're gonna take those out of there. Then they will start crushing and shaping on the remaining 2.5 miles that they had postponed. And paving will happen after that, which is expected towards the end of May, beginning of June, with slope restoration and cleanup, which will end June 17th. That way, 2015 roads will be complete. For the 2016 projects, we're going to have 2 separate projects. First one is gonna be 3.5 miles of crushing and shaping, paving throughout Trowbridge Park area. That one's expected to be bid out here in early May with construction starting mid-June, ending around October. The other project will be South Vandenboom from Grove Street to Bricktown Road. It's about 0.8 miles. That one's gonna involve some sanitary and some water main. That one, we're currently awaiting permits for the water and sanitary right now. That's expected to be bid out mid-May, end of May. Construction June to October. The 2017 projects will be the remaining 4.5 miles of work. That one's in the process of the drinking water revolving fund application. We're gonna find out more on that in the future here. Looks like it's gonna be another busy summer with work that's being postponed for 2015. 2.5 miles. There's gonna be the 2016 new work, which is the 3.5 miles in Trowbridge. There's gonna be the 0.8 of a mile on South Vandenboom. Not to mention, the county's gonna be doing Ontario Street. So it's gonna be busy throughout this area. Talking to Dana Dolan, they did say that the oil prices are still pretty low, so we can hope to still see some good prices when this is good. So we're just crossing our fingers for May when we get those bids. Hopefully they're repeat of last year, I guess. Any questions?
Yep.
Mark, you explained what you're gonna do with the culverts and that, what kind, from metal to concrete, and in the 3 locations that I know, Eric's coming up, Huron, Cherry, Erickson.
Some of the culverts that are even up right now, or busted at the ends, we're actually taking out those metal culverts and putting in concrete, followed by gravel over them. In a lot of those cases, actually, there will be additional gravel on the road too as well. So you'll have a little bit more cover over the top of the pipe, plus a stronger culvert with concrete. Hopefully that will help.
The one that everyone asked for is one on Erickson by the Bonanza. Is that gonna be dug up and put a new one in?
Yes.
Okay.
That one will be.
Thank you.
Our major wild card that we're working with right now is the weather.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's going to clear up so we can have that May start that we're looking at, but if it gets delayed, same as last year, we may be starting a little later, but we still anticipate completing on time.
Yeah, they should, hopefully they could be nice if they were paved by the end of, the 2015 postponed work was paved by the end of May. Crossing our fingers for that, but I think it'll happen.
Mark, do you have kind of a list of where you're gonna start yet, or is that just so the
No.
residents know?
I think that will be almost a week or 2 before they actually start. They will try getting a schedule from them.
Yeah, we did have discussion about that at the meeting on Monday, and that's primarily going to depend on how the snow melt goes and what the flows are, basically, in terms of what sections of road are actually dry enough to actually work on. So it's a little bit in flux right now. Again, we've got snow forecast tonight, tomorrow, possibly cold the rest of the week, so it's going to be slow drying out.
I think it's going to be hard to nail down a schedule on which street is being done because they are short, and they will be able to do them pretty fast. So, it's 2.5 miles, and they might be able to do, like right here, they show all the paving done in 1 week. So, to try nailing down to a street on a day is kind of hard.
Okay, I just figured that would be the question, when are you gonna do mine?
Give them a week range, I guess.
Okay. Anything else for Mark? Okay, thanks. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, were you going to stick around for the contract talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave, did you want to add anything? Okay. Okay, then discuss proposed contract from Peter White Public Library Board. As you have in your packet, this is the contract that was found at the library. Bruce found it when he was going through some of the stuff when the previous director left. And we saw it, and we had conversation, and then we, Bruce, the interim director, Bruce McDonald, took it to his board, and they reviewed that a few weeks ago. Like I said, we've been gone for 3, pretty much. And they did come back with just a couple changes. In the funding, 3C, we changed the date at the bottom of the first page. And then they did add equal to 1 mil of the taxable property value, and added as reduced by the Headley Amendment. So this is basically the same contract we already saw before, if you remember, and with those changes. So this is what their board is presenting to us. So we can pretty much say this is agreeable. We can send it back to our little committee that we did and try to set up another meeting with them. I don't have a recommendation, it's just whatever the pleasure of this board is. Dan?
My only question is that this is a new contract, but they're looking for the amount of 1 mil, and actually we aren't at 1 mil at the present time. We're at 0.9.
Yeah, that's why they added that. If you can see, it's kind of in bold.
Yeah, with the Headley thing, I know, but I just want to make sure that they understand that we're not starting out at 1 mil when we sign this contract. We're starting out at what we're presently going with, which is 0.9 something or other.
My understanding, and legal can correct me, is that this is a renewal. Is that the way you approached it, or you?
It can be. I mean, it has, that's open to discussion, but
But I mean, the way this is, would that be the way you read that when
well,
you looked at it?
it can be.
Okay.
If it is a renewal, it gets rolled back by Headley every year, just as it would had you had the existing contract. The millage and your contract are 2 entirely separate issues. But the as reduced by Headley amendment that's in the proposed draft from the library would contemplate that it would be the 0.9061 or whatever it was as reduced, and we'll actually get the new rollback figure in May. That's not computed yet for the December levy, the December 2016 levy even, so we don't even know what that is yet. That has to be computed and comes in about a month and a half.
Does everybody understand the distinction between the millage question and the contract? Originally, this is what we started out with, was discussion on the contract. Okay, John?
Well, I'm hearing what's being said, and that's fine, except that I think that Trustee Pompo, he brings up a good point. You can start out with a new millage, and it's a new contract, and that eliminates any question about where we are. And I think it's an appropriate way to do it. Pick a number that's acceptable, and then put that into this.
Well, and I understand the 1 mil. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But my question is we're signing a new contract, and it states 1 mil on the contract from the point that we signed this. So the way I look at it, it's saying that they want 1 mil starting from the date we signed this for a millage. And actually, we're at this point in time, we're only at .90, I don't know, whatever it is, but that, I would think that it's just at the time we signed this contract, that should be what is it, and then with the Headley thing in there, because it doesn't make, we're not really doing a renewal, we're actually doing a whole new contract. So, I mean, I know we're renewing the millage, but the contract itself states 1 mil.
Yeah, you cannot put the millage on at 1 mil unless you call it a new millage. That's by state law.
Okay.
And that can certainly be put in there and specified. My understanding was this was just kind of a talking point issue that came back, and that and a number of other, you might recall about a month ago I had mentioned I had a half a dozen of things that I thought should be revised, but they were almost superficial revisions. Many of them were grammatical. So that could certainly be modified to state specifically as if we wait till May on it, then you'll have that number as far as what it would be for the 2016 levy. If it's done before that, we can put what it was in 2015, and it would continue to say as reduced by the Headley amendment rollback or something along those lines. But I would agree that it should be specified, but I think this was just a talking point essentially to understand where it is going forward.
So I think if we agree to this, then I think we just basically plug in whatever the last millage was for, and then.
And specify what year Headley computation that was for even, so that there isn't any confusion on that.
Right.
Yeah, it's, my mother always used to say it's all up to us. So this is what they've given us. Now, my question, Roger, though, is, do I understand right that if this goes on as a mill, which would basically not be a renewal, that do we have to wait a year before Headley kicks in? Or would it change?
Well, it depends when your election is, and you can't have an early election anymore now. A pre-May election, in other words, now. So the first year would not be rolled back. But then that's also going to have to go on the ballot as new millage. And that's something between the township and the library, and you can read all kinds of studies and statistics, and I'm not going to recite all of those for you, but traditionally, to sum them up, new millages get defeated a lot more frequently than renewal millages. So that's, again, not swaying or attempting to persuade the board on which way it should go on that one way or the other. But right now, you're at roughly 0.9 mils. And if it was going to be 1 mil, that would be a tax increase, and the ballot language would have to state that that is a tax increase, because it is.
Right. Again,
state law.
And it's no problem if the millage becomes renewal. It's just that I think in the contract we should have that specific point that we're starting out at.
It would be.
If we were going to have it as a new one.
No, as a renewal,
No,
regardless.
If you're going to do the renewal on the millage, when it comes time for the millage, that's fine. Then it would be whatever the Headley is at that point. But I think in the contract, I just want to see that. I don't want to see 1 mil in the contract signed April 6th, and they're going to say, whoa, well, wait a minute, we get a mill. You know, I mean, you could look at it that way, I guess.
That's what we'd have to decide, whether
Right.
we're making this a renewal based on the current amount,
Right.
or whether we're.
That's for the millage, right? Yeah.
Hey, John?
Isn't the simplest way to do this is to treat it as a new contract, and then put in a fixed number, let's say 9.9. And then you're not waiting on the decision to be made with a date in mind. It could take whatever time it takes to come to an agreement, and then you'd be dealing with a new contract with a millage on it, with a 0.9.
I would say no. I think your preferable way to handle it would be to say that it was originally a 1 mil as reduced by Headley to .897 or whatever it might be, based upon either the 2015 or the 2016 Headley amendment. I think that clarifies it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Keep in mind this other contract that you had that has some errors in it, quite frankly, has not been modified since 1993. So this contract could be around for a lot of years also. So for purposes of clarity, the best way, in my opinion, is going to be to say that it was a 1 mil as reduced by Headley per the 2015 calculation. If you do it before May 31, we have that number. We can just tomorrow plug that number in, and that's your starting point. Because if you start changing that millage rate, then that is arguably a new and a different issue. It messes up your ballot potentially.
So if we do that, then when it comes time for the ballot issue itself, that's just basically renewal because it is the same.
Absolutely, yes, correct. It's not a new millage.
So remember, we're looking at this, or I mean, it seems like right now, we're looking at this as though this is a contract with the millage amount in it. And the reason we pulled this apart initially was to look at the contract. We weren't even addressing the millage amount. I mean, they're hand in hand, you have to have something there. But my question is, did anybody have any issues with the contract?
Just the length of it.
Were there points or anything we want to talk about with the contract? Pete, you said the length.
I would just say that we treat it as 1 mil, basically, these ways minus a Headley for a period of time. And then we review it in 4 or 5 years or something. I think Danny brought up 4 years before or something like that.
Do you have a thought on the time frame, an opinion? Or
I would say 4 or 5. I mean, let's not go 23 years or whatever it might, you know, I'll put it 4 years or something like that. You got new boards and everything else, so if you want 5 years. But a reasonable amount of time, but just put mill out there minus Headley for a period of, will be reviewed in X amount of years. And then they look at it and they go from there.
Roger?
You do not have to specify the number of years
Right.
that it will be renewed for. In fact, different criteria might come into play for future boards. You have to be very cautious of binding future boards. You're allowed to do it in some instances, but not, there are limits to that. So the contract itself is basically indicating that starting at this point in time, we will have library contracted services consisting of, and the way it's being proposed is that it's going to be the same services that City of Marquette residents get. The board, the township board, has the absolute discretion on determining how long the millage will be put on the ballot for, and you may not want to lock future boards in to say that it's going to be 1 year, which might be unreasonably short, or 6 years, which might be unreasonably long, when you really have no indication of what the economy or what other type of factors might play into that decision. So this contract does not need to specify how often it will be renewed, and by being silent, the township board still has that discretion to address it each time that
But
the
can you say
millage
will
expires.
be reviewed? Because that way forces people to look at the contract, just like any other contract we have. And we all learned a lot of what's in this contract. We never knew half the
Well, let me-
penal codes and all of the fines and stuff like that. I
Well-
think we should also take a good look at, you know, down the road. The library might change something. We'd like to ask questions about it, but I don't want to see it in the newspaper again that we're closing the library, because that was kind of overreact. But also, there was another point I wanted to make, and it slipped, but I'll wait for a minute. Where's my glasses?
Well, we're still kind of confusing that the time frame of the contract with the length of the millage. They don't have to coincide.
No.
You can, you could probably say, the contract will be renewed in 4 years, and it's a 4-year millage request, but you don't have to. And that's probably why initially it started out forever, because they figured there's no length, there's no termination to the contract, but we'll review it every 2 or 4 or whatever years on the millage request. So we can do what we want.
Yeah,
We got
the
hands
the
already.
other comment I want to make is, I think it was a comment made by John or someone, that if a person from outside Market City attends something or goes, I forget what the terminology was, they get charged more. And the library said, no, that's up to the person who's putting on the event. But it should be in the contract that they will not charge anyone from outside of the city any more or any less than they do everyone else. So that should be right in their contract when somebody wants to contract this room.
Protect them, too.
Right.
Yeah, we can have Jim come up if he's willing to respond too, but, okay, Ernie?
A couple things. I'll answer the last question. Are you talking about additional fees or something like that? If you're referring to the Arts and Council, art and craft deal, they're a rental unit. They're renting space from there, so they can do pretty much what they want. And as far as I know, unless the library comes up or attorney comes up on that too, so.
That's why I
don't
say the
know.
library should state that if you're gonna sell something or charge something, it'd be the same for everybody, or you don't do it.
Yeah, it is now.
Okay, as long as that's in there, I mean, it's understandable. Because then it takes care of the problem that we had. We said, oh, we're getting charged more than someone else. Well, if it's stated that they cannot do it, and anyone who comes in and puts on something states that you cannot charge differently for anyone else, it takes it away.
I think that's something we have to work out through our attorney and that to see what can or can't be done. Because if, depending on where you're at, anything, if you're renting an area for yourself, you're paying dollars for it, you're controlling what's going on within that, and that, how it's being done. You can't really say as a landlord, you can do this and you can't do that. It gets to be very difficult, and then I don't think you can do it legally in that too, so.
No, he's just
But
saying
if you're
the
paying the
library
freight,
wouldn't.
Ernie, you can do it.
You're saying the library wouldn't.
The library would state that in their
Not the
contract to
arts.
someone from the outside, arts and craft, say, if you're gonna charge, the charge has to be throughout the same.
I think we need to have some legal advice on
Well,
that.
you can do it, I know.
I think that's one thing we have to look further. As far as, I brought this up at our meeting about binding future boards and that, I'm very concerned with that. And I'm looking at this contract or the draft to send on number 2. The agreement begins on certain day and will continue on a certain day. I'm looking at 2 years because that'll be in the middle of the next term, and it gives the new board time to look at it and decide what they want to do. People aren't aware of it, but you got 7 people up here right now. These 7 people may not be here November 21st. So it's a whole different ballgame in that. So it's what I'm looking forward in that. So I'd like to look at it as a 2-year agreement and not be automatically extended for an indefinite period of time. I don't like it. I don't believe in it.
It forced us to come around and look at it.
That's what I'm looking at. So I think the other side of it is the millage. The millage is entirely divorced from the contract when you come down to it. It's entirely, and when it gets to the millage and the length of the millage, this board will have to determine whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, or 5 years, whatever they want. It's completely divorced from the contract itself and that. So that's my 2 cents.
Dan, you had your hand up.
Well, I don't see a problem with the, if future boards has a problem with this contract, they're gonna do the same thing that we did. They're gonna terminate the contract so they can renegotiate it. I mean, I think if you start limiting this to every 2 years or something like that, then people, what's gonna change on this, basically? I mean, if there is some minor things that need to be changed, I'm sure that can be worked out with the board, with the library board, whatever. So I mean, the provision for the 6-month notice is still in the contract. I just don't see this having to keep coming up every 2 years or whatever. I mean, it's the same at the millage. I mean, if we have the millage for 2 years, and every 2 years, they gotta keep coming back and ask for the millage, and we have to keep, we're going around and around and around. Because that 6-month termination thing is still in the contract, clause is still in there, I think this board looked at it, I think basically because it was 1993. I mean, they just wanted a new contract. And the new contract that we have, I think is pretty basic. I don't see really any major problems with it, other than my question about the millage, but I don't see a reason to limit, I mean, the first part is basically a trial point, that after 3 years, if there's no problem, then we just go on in perpetuity. So that, you could make that 2 years if you want, and if there's no problem after 2 years, just, the next part makes it go into forever, until such time.
John?
I think Treasurer Johnson's point is a point that we should look at very carefully. I agree that it should not be any longer than 2 years, and I say that even though the contract may have wording that says it can come back, keep in mind that this township went on for a number of years without ever looking at it because the issue didn't come up. And so it's important that we take a look at something as valuable as over $200,000 of our citizens' tax dollars needs to be looked at to see whether we still agree that what we've done with it is the proper thing. And I think he's absolutely right about 2 years. And I think it does another thing. It takes it and puts it between the periods of election. And that's another valuable part of it.
Randy?
Not a contract question, just a technical question for the treasurer. The May 1st date, is that something that you can commit to every year? We're somewhat reliant on when the county releases the funds.
No, that should not be effect. Normally, we have it by the end of March to the 15th of April, somewhere in that vicinity. If we didn't get it, I would have to feel that there'd be a lot of municipalities and a lot of entities that would be on the county's back real quick if they didn't get their money by then. So, no, I do not see May 1st as being a problem in that. I looked at that too, and I said, if we don't do it, where are we getting the money from? And that too, so I don't see a problem with that.
That's my concern, because the only place you have to get money from is the general fund.
I know.
Yes, Roger?
Just as another legal option, again, not advice, but hearing some of the commentary, one other minor revision you could make in terms of what the contract term is going to be. You could put something in along the lines of that it'll be for 2 years, or an initial 3-year term and 2 years thereafter, with an automatic renewal unless either party wishes to not do so. So it still has that 2-year term in it, if you like, but you may wish to have something in it that doesn't mandate that you reopen the contract if everything is going according to anticipation, so that it just does get a renewal in that respect. That's a very common business contract type of provision. So that's another option that's available. Instead of saying that it renews indefinitely after the first 3 years, you could say it renews for an additional 2-year period, and then you still always have the 6-month termination provision in it. So that's another just legal option that you have if that looks more palatable. Not saying you should or you shouldn't do it, but that's a legally permissible thing you could do.
So we could be in the same position then as we were this year, coming into budgeting, knowing that if we wanted to give them a 6-month notice, we'd probably look at it in the first or second quarter so that we could allow the budget, whatever board, whoever's here, would still have time. Okay. Dan?
So Roger, what you're saying basically is the fact that it would be every 2 years, but if no question from either parties comes up, it would just automatically be renewed for another
Sure.
2 years?
For another 2 years instead of having that indefinite
Right.
provision
So it's something
in
that
there.
we don't have to actually come up with. I mean, if there's no problem, we just let it run out.
Correct.
Somebody's gonna look at it anyways.
And that would be, a new board comes in November, let's say, and of course, that's the 4-year schedule, but That should be part of your budget discussion. So if you start talking about what you're gonna do in January, February, March, like we did, you know, it's gonna be in your discussion. It should be. And a new board would definitely wanna bring it up. So it should get talked about. John?
A little later, we're going to talk, hopefully, about what's gone on in other parts of the state of Michigan. And I want to, as long as we're talking about this issue, these 4 communities, Birmingham, the village of Bingham Farms, the city of Bloomfield Hills, and the village of Beverly Hills have in their contracts, each one of them, that it would be for periods of 2 years. I think that the wisdom of their attorneys and their people that put their well-thought-of documents together was something that we could use as a guide. I think we need to look at a number of things that are in their contracts as well. But I would urge you to look at the fact that these communities, they're substantial communities, have all lived with 2-year periods. Why we would have to do anything to extend you to 4, 5, or continuing without any review, to me, is an improper way to address this.
I think what Roger was saying about 2 years, and then really what it amounts to is forcing the board to take a look at it. Either you agree with it, or you don't agree with it, and you move forward on it, and just for another 2 years and that. And then talking about budgetary, we don't really know where we're gonna be in 2 years. We don't know where we're gonna be next year. From what we've looked at so far and what we had last year and that, the dark stores are not going away. We have a number of them that are willing or down there already, so we don't know what effect that's gonna have on us or anything else in that. So there's different things like this here that, and true, the dollars we're talking about are flow-through dollars. There's no question about that. They don't come in their general fund or anything else. We put it on the budget, people vote for it, it goes through. But if we get into a major bind that we have to look at cutting back on services, a lot of things are gonna have to start raising their ugly head as to what we're gonna do to get dollars in that. And it may be that we have to put something on the ballot that either this or this or this, and we don't know. And that's why I think 2 years would be sufficient to take a look at it. If we're fine, we move forward for the next 2 years in that, and continue to move forward in that. So, I don't know. Just looking at the dollars and the budget and what we're doing in that, it's difficult for me as treasurer to look forward and not knowing where the dollars are coming from in that. That's what I have to say.
Randy?
Had a contract with our polling place, St. Christopher's. I don't know if you remember what that said, but it gave us 2 years, and if everything was going okay, an additional 2 years, then it was over. Then it had to be looked at again. So that way, because I wanted it to go longer, but Roger kind of slapped me down a little bit, said you can't commit a board that far down the road. So I would be amenable to that. I think that's agreeable. 2 years, and if there's no problems with it, it rolls on for another 2 years, and then it's over after 4 years, and then you look at it again.
So we can, oh, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I just want to clarify one thing. Ernie, you're talking about two different things. You're talking about a contract and you're talking about the millage. Well, the millage is separate from the contract. You want to make the contract every 2 years, that's not a problem, but it's up to the board to decide the length of the millage when the millage comes out. So, I don't have a problem with 2 years on the contract, but that doesn't, if we make 4 years for the millage, then 4 years later is when we can change the millage. So I just want to make sure we understand that.
So, okay, go Randy.
My only suggestion would be is from the clerk standpoint, you'd make it an election year, either midterm or presidential, because you get it in off year, then you got additional cost for election, which is about $6,000 to $7,000, which I don't think we might not have in a few years.
Yeah.
So I think,
But I mean, at this point in time, we're talking about the contract, not the
yeah,
millage.
so I would say the contract, if you are going to look at a millage question down the road, it'd be on the even number years.
That makes sense.
Diane, do you want to add anything?
No, I think it's pretty good as far as it goes, but I continue to keep recommending.
So do we want our committees to meet again, and do you want to make a recommendation?
Well,
How do you, what's your pleasure? Dan?
I don't know if you want to make a motion, whether, it appears to me that we're all in pretty much in agreement that the contract with these minor changes that we have to put in it is agreeable.
What I'd like to do, Jim, if do you want to speak? Do you want to answer questions, ask us anything, or? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because I knew Bruce wasn't going to be here. It's up to you if you want to.
We'll have the committee go back with them, not me.
Well,
I just wanted to give. Randy, did you have something else? Somebody.
I would suggest that trustee Pomp will make a motion to direct a subcommittee to go back to the library, to meet with the library board with those adjustments. And then they can bring it to their board. And then if it's okay with their board, then they can come back to us and we can get it on the agenda next meeting, hopefully for approval.
Ernie?
What are we talking about to make sure the committee
Yeah.
knows what we're supposed to be doing?
We'd have to do some kind of direction.
Yeah,
I just
get some
wanted to give
direction
Jim an
there, otherwise-
opportunity. If we said something he wasn't right, or, no, you're good? Okay. It's up to you.
You want me to come?
Yes, please.
Well, he's coming up. Are we talking about the 2 years and 2 years? Is that where we're going?
Even, yeah.
On the even years, and then on the, are we going to get into the millage then too portion of it at the same time?
That's a
or not?
different
Or leave
thing.
that off?
That's a whole different
Separate
option.
issue.
Separate issue, okay,
And it has to come back to the board.
okay.
Okay, my name is Jim Jacek. I'm a trustee of the Peter White Library Board. Live at 328 West Park Street, Marquette, Michigan. In our discussions, our primary objective is to get a contract with you that you're happy with, so that we can get the millage on the ballot and hopefully pass in the November election is what we decided we were going to do. So that's our main objective. I would like to make one point to Mr. Marks, and that is, I am from the Birmingham-Bloomfield area. And I think you might want to look into this a little more. I think what they have in that community is something that Mr. Zapp is talking about. That is the premier library in Michigan, very well funded. They may have little peculiarities, but it's really well supported. And so I guess I feel it's like a compliment to compare Peter White to Walton Library in Birmingham. But I think that would be a mistake, so.
It would be a mistake to do what?
It'd be a mistake to think that the arrangement that they have would be duplicated here. I don't think you know enough about what they're doing, and I'm not sure it's worth our time. I'm not sure it's a good comparison.
Well,
I think they're a very well-funded, established library, and I think they have a continuing kind of contract that Mr. Zappa talked about. So I don't know what the point is that you're trying to make with the comparison. So,
well, can I answer?
Go ahead.
The response I was making was with regard to the 2-year time period.
I understand
And that's in each of their contracts.
that. Yes.
Yeah, that's all I said about that. But there are more things that they have in their contracts that are worth being considered by this board and your board about making an acceptable arrangement between communities maybe more acceptable than we have today. And if-
Well,
if-
I would just say that it is our goal at the Peter White Library to make sure we have acceptable arrangements with all communities. That is very important to us.
Okay,
Okay.
and,
And let that be on the record.
okay. So when the chair will permit me to, I'll read about, to the audience and to this board and your board, a couple of unique things about what goes on in that group of communities that we do not do here today that I think should be considered. And before you leave today, I have a complete set of all of their contracts. I'm willing, through the chair and through the committee, to have you walk out with.
Well, that wasn't my purpose. I just, I just thought it was, I think Mr. Zappa was trying to streamline this, and I appreciate that. And I'm not sure that, comparing ourselves to Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Beverly Hills, it's going to be very productive. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. Yes, Dan?
So then, looking at this again, I will make the motion that the Township Library Committee goes back to the library board with the proposed changes that we talked about tonight for their approval. And if everything is acceptable, I would expect it to come back to the Township Board, next board meeting perhaps, if we're lucky enough to get it that quick, for final approval.
So let's enumerate a little better what you're looking for.
The 2-year clause that Ernie was talking about, that is renewable every 2 years. And my only concern was that 1 mil change to whatever it is at 2015's Headley rate.
Clear enough for you?
I would say as redrafted by legal counsel.
Redrafted by legal.
Because Roger, you understand what he wants, right?
I believe so, and I'm sure that I'll get told otherwise if I didn't. And I had a couple of minor things also that I guess I should probably throw on the table, because anticipating that there would be some give and take and discussion, and that there would be some more revisions.
Pardon me,
One of the-
Roger, do we want a second first, or would you rather?
Probably would need a second first.
I'll second it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
So, in the realm of that discussion, for example, paragraph 3B in this contract, that's the one that says that we will assign, 3A is the one that talks about assigning penal fines. That's a very standard provision, and as we talked about before at other meetings, the township can't keep those penal fines themselves. The fines have to be used for library purposes. They could be used for other library purposes, or they could be assigned, I suppose, if you could come up with some type of a plan that those fines would be used to benefit Marquette Township residents specifically. That's subject to discussion, or you can just assign the penal fines. But 3B discusses state aid allocated to the township. That paragraph should probably come out. It's not in the existing contract because the township doesn't get state aid to libraries. The library gets state aid if they have a contract with a township like us. So that's important for the library because it's a source of revenue for them, but we don't have state aid to assign them. So that probably ought to be just stricken, and it won't affect the library's bottom line in any way, shape, or form because they will continue to get their state aid, but we don't have anything that we can be assigning in 3B, essentially. There are also some just general grammatical things in some of the paragraphs 5, 6, and 7 that I think it could be streamlined. It's not, quite frankly, model of grammatical clarity in the way it's worded a little bit, but I think we could have the same intent without losing anything from it, and it's just some getting rid of a few heretofores and wherefores and things that attorneys like to throw in
Why
there.
don't we direct them to clean it up and bring it back?
But I'm not proposing any substantive changes to those. Then I think also we probably want to put in, we've talked at length about specifically indicating which section of the Michigan compiled laws is the enabling statute that's being relied upon to invoke this contract, because that was the source of some confusion, and there's at least an argument that when the 1993 one was done, that by inadvertence or otherwise, the wrong section is arguably cited in that 1993 contract. That should be cleaned up and fixed. That again doesn't change the substance of the contract, but I think it will help eliminate some of these discussions in years down the road of how did we get here. Then you probably want to just specify a starting date, because this contract can supersede the 1993 contract. Keep in mind what you did now is just gave an intent to terminate, a 6-month notice to terminate at the end of the year. Once you arrive at an agreeable contract between both parties, probably the preferred way to handle it is to say that this starts on June 1, or it starts on July 31st, or whatever the case may be, just a starting date on it, and then you should have it run through the end of a year, whether that's the end of 2018, the end of 2019, and then it should renew for those 2-year periods, something along those lines. But it should be year end, because your fiscal year, the township's fiscal year, is a calendar year, essentially, from a budget standpoint and otherwise. There was some discussion at some point as far as, well, would it be better to have the contract coincide with the library's fiscal year, which I recognize is a different fiscal year. That is going to, so I don't keep talking forever, that will create you some problems. It really needs to be on your fiscal year from a budgeting standpoint, from the millage standpoint, and for a whole number of reasons. So that should be specified in there also, so there isn't confusion, and just so all parties know what they're dealing with. And I think basically the rest of what I came up with are truly grammatical things. That I don't think there's anything else. It'll look slightly different in wording, but it's just grammatical revisions for the most part. And again, I'm referring primarily to paragraphs 5, 6, and 7, I think, there, that I would streamline a bit.
So, today's Tuesday. If we were to shoot for our next meeting to have this at a discussion point again, could you clean this up so that the two committees could get together in the next 2 weeks
Absolutely.
and have it?
Today is Tuesday. I can have this for you by the end of the week, if you, of
Okay.
this week, if you
So
wish.
if we wanted to try to schedule a meeting the following week, that would be good. Okay.
Roger, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. The contract that we have, we gave notice that it would end at the end of the year.
Correct.
So it's in play till the end of the year.
Correct.
So if we agree on some new contract, or renewal, as you say, the renewal part cannot start before the other one ends, can it? You're not implying.
You can say in your new contract, you're not renewing your contract, you're renewing your millage. potentially, but you're not renewing your contract. This is a brand-new contract, and you can, as part of your new contract, rescind your old contract, that this one supersedes the old
So
one.
they would have to rescind the old contract too.
Well, it's a contract, so both parties have to sign it. So
So the old contract would not run until the end of the year. It would end at the agreed point.
well, it could be either, but all I'm saying is, it probably, if you have something that you are both in agreement to, you may as well make it effective and supersede and get rid of the old one
Okay.
that the parties have looked at and are jettisoning.
And
Good.
Go ahead,
I'm
John.
assuming our appointed committee that meets with the library is going to take that back. With the permission of the chair, could I ask that they also take back with them, perhaps not for this contract, but for their review and filing away for maybe 2 years from now, a couple of the points I thought were are really valuable of what went on in these other communities. Is that possible?
Well, everybody got a copy of it, and we put it
No,
in our mailbox.
they didn't get it, and neither did the public.
Well, no, let's not worry about that right now. This is what's before us. If we want to change to something else, we can look at it later. This board has seen it, so if we want to talk about it at another time, that's fine.
They had a couple of unique things that we just don't have that I think should be considered.
But that's changing, totally changing the whole methodology of how this operates, and I don't know that the board wants to try to get into something else right now. We're looking at the contract, you're kind of talking about funding. That's a little bit different. Unless somebody wants to say something different right now, I'd just assume we not go in another direction. Ernie?
Being one of the board members, I want to make sure I understand where we're gonna go and at this point in time. So we're gonna have the attorney go through and make the changes that he understands, give back to us, and then we'll send a copy to the library board for their review at the same time. Then we'll get together and discuss it as a group. Am I on the right wavelength now, so I don't mess up now? Is this the direction we're talking about going now? So I want to make sure.
Well, that's,
'Cause I don't want to go into the committee meeting and not have any idea where we're coming from or where we have to go.
you're basically moving into a negotiational part that they've given us theirs, we're giving us them ours, and if it's accepted by both, then
So
I just want to
you
know
can-
where we're going to go in that too.
So you have enough information to fill this in, right, Roger?
I believe
That we
so.
have a working document.
And the library committee, which is not a quorum of the board, I will get that to the committee. I will have it done by the end of the week. And I guess if there are questions on things that maybe I didn't perceive what was being discussed, then I guess we can discuss that. Now, having said that, it is still conceivable that that contract, even if you go back to your library committee meeting, would still have to at some point be approved by the, and your board.
Right.
Yeah, so you're going back with a draft that hasn't been approved by the board, essentially. But by the same token, I think it's going to contain, from what I'm hearing here at least so far tonight, my understanding of what the board consensus is on those items, if that makes sense. Now, if I might, without being out of order, address the issue of the other contracts, there are two groups of things in those contracts. One is the manner of funding, which, quite frankly, if it is going to be something other than a pass-through millage, that creates some issues, and I don't know if they've ever experienced these issues in Bingham Farms or some of those other places that are not, but there are some significant issues there, such as what would happen on the one that has the .39 mils if they are using a formula on what the payment will be, but it's not the millage amount. So that means that the township somehow, or the city or whatever, is going to have to come up with more money out of its general fund or someplace to fund the contract amount because it's different than the millage amount. Or if the millage, for some reason, because the tax base has escalated dramatically, and let's ignore the Headley rollbacks for the moment, because that's designed to try to fix that to some extent. But if it generates a lot more income, then what happens to that income on the .39 mils? Because the millage must say what it's used for. So the township can't keep that money, and by the same token, the township would be in breach of its contract. Maybe the library wouldn't complain if it paid more, but it would have extra money. It would be in non-compliance with funds generated by the public. So that is a problematic provision that may not have been recognized because it just didn't happen there. But there are some real issues in the manner in which some of those formulas are derived in those contracts. Now, having said that, there's a whole separate batch of interesting issues in some of those, including right now our contract says that it's for residents of the township, essentially, that they get the services. So a couple of those contracts, 2 of the 3 at least, include employees of businesses, people who work in the township. Is that fair game? Sure. That is something that is not based on the funding component of it, and that could be something that would be workable. Now, again, another potential ambiguity and problem in one of those contracts is they talk about not part-time employees, and that is a can of worms, because what does that mean? You need to be putting some definitions on, is that 30 hours a week? Is that 32 hours a week? Do they have to get benefits? So all I'm saying is those contracts aren't exactly the model of clarity either, but there are some very intriguing issues on it. So depending on which batch of issues you want to look at, there are 2 groups of issues in there. And I suppose, well...
that's why I said that's a whole different
Okay.
ballywig of how it's funded. If we want to look at that at some point, that's totally fine. But I don't think it's right for these purposes.
Yeah, all I'm saying is there are 2 different groups, so the timing of when you discuss those 2 different groups might be different. The funding versus the constituents who get served.
I saw his first.
So the motion will be, as I'm trying to put it together, will direct legal counsel to draft an amended contract as discussed from the township board for the library subcommittee to bring to the library board for discussion. Or library board subcommittee would be, because they're a subcommittee also.
And we can leave it general like that because you're going to stipulate the terms and all that in the contract. We don't have to specify them. Good.
It's part of the record.
Okay. Ernie?
Just one question. Reading through the draft that we have and then reading through the documentation we have on those other libraries downstate, the one thing I highlighted, and I went back and tried to read the draft to see if there was anything in there, the one sentence that says, should the millage fail to receive a majority vote, then the agreement shall be considered null and void. Then I look at 3C, we're talking about the millage and that, it just says, unless we're going to change that dramatically, the township shall pay the library an amount equal to 1 mil of the taxable property. Well, if the millage doesn't pass, it doesn't say that where we're going to get the money and that. So there's got to be something in here to give us the back door out in that too, so.
Well, I think it can be written in there, and it should be written in there, that if the vote fails, then the contract becomes null and void.
And by the same token, if you are going to have a provision that says the contract renews for, for 2 years, you have, if you go back, even if you have a 4-year millage, let's say, down the road, you cannot levy a millage if you don't have that contract in place. So those are reverse corollaries, more or less, and maybe a sentence both ways, or one sentence combining both of those issues is one of the notes that I did have to be including.
That's the one thing, when I was reading through this, there's a lot of interesting in it, and then that jumped out at me real quick when I went back and read this. How do we get the back door out if it fails and that too? And I couldn't see anything. And legally, and maybe there, but not being an attorney, I couldn't tell you.
Well, technically, the unwritten answer to that, I mean, it isn't spelled out per se in the contract, but if your millage fails, you don't have any millage to pay, essentially. And the source of the money is millage. It's not general fund, budgeted items, and so forth. But is it preferable to have a sentence that says that? Yes.
Yeah, I think Ernie's right. C says that, an amount equal to 1 mil.
That's what got me, was that end of it, and that too, so. Not being an attorney, I didn't know if there was some way that would get us into the back door, out the back door or not. I don't know.
That's one of my half-dozen notes I was referring to.
Good.
Good thing we only got one library.
Yeah. Any more discussion?
Can we have the clerk read the motion?
It'll be direct legal counsel to draft an amended contract as discussed by the township board for the library subcommittee, would be the board subcommittee, to bring to the library subcommittee for discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Unanimous on that.
Looking for a 10-minute discussion.
Well, trying to deal with the contract and the amount, I knew there was going to be a little more involvement. So I will get, if everybody, our three can give some dates to me for next week, that would be either good or bad, however you want to do it, I'll transmit them to Jim, and he can get a hold of his committee. Okay?
Okay.
Dave, did you want to share something? Thoughts? No. Are you sure? Okay. Did you get your questions answered, or?
No, I guess
My feet are cold.
the only thing I would suggest is that there's, and it seems from reading that contract that it would be easy enough to put in there, in as much as the township revenue that goes to the library, it's hard for me to believe that that does not go to the improvement of the library, the maintenance and operation of that building. And it would seem that if that is the case, then when some outside entity, whether it's a city entity or whoever it is, comes in there and rents a room, that they should not discriminate rates between residents and not residents. And it would seem it would be easy enough to put in that contract that those rates would have to be compatible. That was my comment.
Amen.
Okay, thanks. Okay, new business. We got lots. Consider budget amendment number 2016-03.
I'll present to the board budget amendment 2016-03, and I'll give you it's a small one, but I'll give you highlights of that. Authorization is requested to add to the wastewater and water funds general service departments $1,000 for an annual network fleet fee for GPS services. Also an additional $1,000 for public works facility supplies. That offset will come from the contingency departments of both funds. I make a motion to approve the budget amendment, and I will reference it in the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions?
No questions?
Okay.
Just a
we-
question.
Oh, yes, Ernie.
When you say $1,000 and you have a current budget, is that current total budget 22,950 for GPS, or is that just part of a general service dollar amount? And you're just increasing that?
I will get that answer for you.
That's not for the GPS.
That's just the current, that's it, that's the total, okay. Way I read it, I wasn't quite sure in that. Okay. Answer, questions answered.
Okay. Roll call.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes,
That motion carries.
thank you. All right, 10B is consider South Vandenboom Sanitary Sewer Project Phase 1, contractor's pay request number 3. Superintendent Page is on the podium.
In July of 2015, the Township Board awarded the construction contract for the South Vandenboom Sanitary Sewer Extension Project to Overstar Incorporated for the total cost of $543,038. And the project is substantially complete. It has been complete for quite a while now. But there is retainage, and the contractor's requesting pay request number 3, which has also been recommended by our engineers, North Country Engineering, in the amount of $17,956.20, which is half of the 5% retainage. So the final payment will be an equal payment when basically the only punch list items are restoration. But like all projects, the weather's kind of a factor in the final payment. So I'm recommending their request as recommended by North Country Engineering for $17,956.20.
Any questions for Kirk? Randy?
I'll make a motion, we approve that.
Support.
Motion and support? Ernie?
Reading through this, Kurt, I'm just trying to determine, we're almost to the end of this contract, are we not?
Yes.
We got about, close I can figure, around $18,000 left, somewhere in that vicinity. Just rough figures in that.
Yes, yep.
So, okay.
This is not really affected by the road, the rest of the repairs that are going to be going on shortly?
No.
They're the completion?
These are different projects.
Yep, okay. Anything else? Okay, we have motion and support. Right? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that one's done. Consider Trowbridge Park Low Pressure Force Main Project, Phase 3, contractor's pay request number 4.
This is actually a very similar request. This is for the Trowbridge Park Low Pressure Force Main Project Phase 3. This is pay request number 4, and they're asking for half of their 5% retainage in the amount of $6,807.89.
I'll make the motion that we pay payment number 4 from Overstar. Recommended payment for North Country Engineering, the amount of $6,807.89.
Support.
Motion and support. Any comments?
Here again, this is almost to the completion of this project, then, too?
Yes, correct. Yep. So there'll be about $600 to $800 left.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Consider Marquette Township sanitary sewer projects, lateral benefit charges, water system extension projects, lateral benefit charges.
Okay, over the last several years, Marquette Township has been self-funding the construction of sanitary sewer collection systems extensions. And as homes have connected, they've been paying connection permit fees and lateral benefit charges, with many taking advantage of low-interest, long-term financing offered by the township. Lateral benefit charges are allowed in our water and wastewater ordinances for projects that are outside special assessment districts. And a lateral benefit charge is a portion of the main construction costs that is spread across the equivalent assessable frontage as determined by the township assessor of the benefiting parcels within the project area. This year, we're constructing phase 2 of the South Vandenboom Road and phase 4 of the Turbridge Park Sanitary Sewer Collection System projects. And we're also constructing a South Vandenboom Road water main extension. And we don't have our MDEQ permits yet, and so we haven't bid the projects, and we don't have final engineer's estimate of cost for all the projects. And in the past, we've had, well, in particular, a project a couple of years ago, we had numerous extensions because of special request, which required recalculating the lateral benefit charges because of increases in equivalent assessable frontage, and then we had varying, increases in cost, and so we were continually recalculating those charges. And in general, construction costs have been rising every year. And we've seen variations in costs based on varying conditions, which don't necessarily correspond to assessable frontage. So, we could have some pretty significant lateral benefit charges in similar projects just because they're in a different location, under different conditions. They might have a lot of rock, or they might have a lot of water. They might have fewer residents, for large projects. In some cases, we've had, a small number of people within a project area paying, if they're paying their proportionate share is going to be quite large. So for all these reasons, I'm requesting that the board establish a flat, for 2016, lateral benefit charge for wastewater collection system and water distribution projects I'm requesting to be established at $24.83 per equivalent front foot, which is 10% over what we've been charging for the last couple of years.
So does this end up being, we always try to kind of do a cost recovery amount if we can? Is that, I'm wondering what you're basing
Well,
the 24
that's a general
on.
theory, although it's not a special assessment, but it's determined in a similar manner, which means, and the different boards have always had different policies in terms of, so it's not necessarily 100% recovery. But assessments have to be not necessarily the cost of an improvement, for example. It has to be, a value to the benefiting property, which so in other words, you might spend $100 improving your property, but the assessment may only go up $10, so, but it's not a special assessment, but I'm just saying there are lots of factors involved. We try to obviously recover the cost as much as possible, consistent with the theory of providing a benefit for the township in general.
So I was just kind of trying to figure out how because we talked about this a little bit, emailing, where did you come up with the 2483? If this is 10% increase over what we were
Well,
doing?
traditionally, it's been, at least in recent years, it's been either, well, first of all, the assessor has to determine, the project limits, the assessable frontage within that project. So we either take the bid cost or the engineer's estimate. Usually the engineer's estimate, because that usually comes first. And the engineer's estimate is more of a standard, so that's going to be a typical cost per different items over time, as opposed to any project can cost any amount of money, basically, is the way it works out. So, and previous boards have established that the public in general is going to be paying 15% off the top.
So $25 is good enough, whether it's a bigger
Right.
project or smaller?
Right.
It'll kind of
So
cover both?
So when we started, recent years, the sewer project, that's what That's the method we use. But it recently came to my attention again because there was around Meeske Avenue, which was a project several years ago. It might have been over 10 years ago. I can't recall. And it was a sewer project. And we had everyone connected except one person. Well, person, I think they actually passed away, possibly being sold. So I went back to look at what the lateral limit charges were for that project, and of course they were quite a bit higher. They were like double this amount, that we're looking at today. So, but only because that's what it was then, and it was a different situation. I'm just trying to standardize as much as possible. The cost consistent with trying to recover as much as possible, but there's got to be some consistency, especially these projects where we're doing phases, basically in the same neighborhood. So, we do a couple blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, and then the next year, you want to have them pay double what, their neighbors down the street are paying.
Dan, go ahead.
So to get to, I want to make sure I understand. What we're doing is we're changing the fee schedule.
No, this is not in the fee schedule.
Okay, so, what we're saying here is anybody that wants to hook up the water or sewer will now pay $24.83.
No, only in these, in this year's projects. So in other words, not everybody pays lateral benefit charges. So for example, contractors often build mains. Okay, we don't typically charge lateral benefit charges there. Projects that we get funded, either through state or federal funds, we borrow money. We don't charge lateral benefit charges. So it's only, in fact, we haven't done a water main in quite a while. Can't remember the last one, actually. So in other words, we're talking, basically right now, we're talking about South Vanwood Road for the water and these last 2 sewer projects.
So this is just, this $24.83 per equivalent front footage is just for your determining the total cost of it's not what people are going to pay?
They are going to pay, yes. If they hook up. See, water, they're not required to hook up at all.
That's what I said. So I mean, basically but you said what we're not saying, if you're putting the sewer project in South Vanwood and everybody wants to hook up to that sewer,
Yep, they would pay
is
the connection.
going to pay the connection fee
Plus the lateral.
plus $24.83 per linear foot.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
Ernie?
Okay. I don't have a problem with 2483. I'm just wondering, last year, how close did you come last year to your estimated when you came up with your figures for the board and then you charged to those individuals for the connection fee? How close were you to that figure?
I'd have to go back. It wasn't totally outrageous. It wasn't right on, obviously, but,
You're telling me you're getting close to it with your trying
Right,
to
yeah.
project out.
Yeah.
You're not doing so. Okay.
what I'm trying to do is, avoid going through this painful process on a weekly basis. Once a year is plenty.
Is it even easier maybe to just make it $25? I mean, for the 17 cents? Just,
Well, I don't know, it makes it any easier. I mean, it's
Doesn't
just a
make a
rounded
difference.
number, but,
okay.
I
Randy?
mean, a lot of people are, like, say, borrowing money. It is a low interest rate, we only charge it 0.5%, or 1.5%.
I'll make a motion, we
So that
approve the
extra quarter's gonna amount to something more.
2016 benefit lateral charges.
I'll second that.
Motion and support. Any other questions for Kirk? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for you. You can go home, hey? Thanks, Kirk. Consider Michigan Community Resolution and Intergovernmental Agreement to manage floodplain development for the National Flood Insurance Program.
Board members, you have seen this before. This is back to you. It originally arrived in early March and was referred to the Planning Commission and to Planner McCarthy to work through. We have been involved with the Marquette County Plan since 1975. They are the parent agency. As you see in this this resolution, there's Community A and Community B provided. The important part of this is at the top of the second page, basically where it's identifying in that first whereas Since 1975, we have been in a historical agreement with Marquette County as our agent, basically to administer the floodplain management program. This resolution continues that, having them be our representative to do that. We fall under their plan. Recommending that you accept. So a lot of pages and a lot of words.
Yes, Ernie?
Do we have anywhere in the township where they're actually running under the floodplain that you're aware of?
The Dead River flood area does.
The Dead
When primarily the Dead River. When we had the Silver Lake Dam break, we estimated there were about 300 residents of the township that could have been impacted had the second dam broke. This would be those areas. But this would also apply to anybody who fell into the floodplain area of Lake Superior as well. So properties that were built within those floodplains would also be eligible for flood insurance under this program.
As long as they're not forced to buy the insurance. That's the next question, because all of a sudden you're talking big dollars real quick.
And as long as they're above ground, yes. Subsurface is not covered by flood insurance. It's basically a continuation of where we've been since 1975.
Do I hear a motion? We have a resolution?
No, this is,
Do you need to read the whole resolution?
No, I'll reference it in the minutes. I don't have to
So
read it
moved.
all.
Yeah, it's lots of pages.
Motion and
Support.
Support.
support? Okay. Roll call?
Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari, yes. Trustee Mark,
yes.
Trustee Truscott,
Yes.
Trustee Pompo,
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries. So I would assume in this resolution where it says Community A, that's Marquette Township, Community B would be the county, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I will, do you have a copy of that in electronic format I will change, or?
I believe Jason does have it
Okay.
electronically, yes.
We'll change those statements then, so it reflects the communities. Well, electronic's easier to change, so.
You're good?
That's right in there.
All right. 10F is consider resolution to reject the appointment of Marcus Aboud to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. This is what I touched on before in your packet. Could we read it into the record? John?
Need a motion. Motion to concur with the recommendation that we send the prepared resolution.
The last paragraph basically says, now therefore be it resolved that the Marquette Charter Township Board of Trustees hereby resolves to respectfully ask the Michigan Senate to reject the appointment of Marcus Aboud to the Michigan Tax Tribunal as proposed by Governor Rick Snyder to the detriment of local governments, tax revenue reliant public agencies, and all constituent taxpayers. So this gentleman was on the tax tribunal before and was instrumental in the beginning with, was it Home Depot, I think?
Yes, Brighton Township.
Yeah, and writing of, kind of starting it off.
Yeah, Brighton Township that actually went with us to the Court of Appeals. Aboud was the judge in their case.
Why
when-
would we want him again?
I'll
When
support
Senator-
that.
I'll
when
second.
When Senator Casperson was here last Friday, he spoke to this, and he will be pursuing this on the floor of the Senate.
I would recommend we send it to all the, not only to Governor Snyder, but I think we should send it to all the entities in Marquette County, so they
Like I
can
did
make,
the letter.
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want that as part of the motion?
It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to
Do
be.
it.
I think we should do that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Yes.
We did? Okay.
Um,
Roll call too.
Yeah.
Board wishes, we could even publish this in the Mining Journal.
Okay, Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Truscott,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Ernie?
The suggestion that our manager said about putting it in a mining journal, I would suggest that we do move that direction and do it, let people know where we stand.
We have a mining journal reporter here tonight. Maybe he can help.
I would think it might be a public interest story.
Okay. 10G is consider a liquor license for UP Sportsplex.
I apologize if some of the attachments might have been a little confusing because they came from other packets. But what's occurring here is the UP Sportsplex is moving from the city of Marquette into Marquette Township. It'll be adjacent to the Peak Fitness, just off of what used to be Wright Street, County Road 492, a connection to Target Walmart intersection, so people know what we're talking about. They currently do not have a liquor license. They are intending to expand their offerings here in Marquette Township and are asking that the board consider the additional license that came out of the last census. As you'll recall, we were given an additional license and we were able to direct where that license went. We had reserved that license for Chili's. Chili's did not come to fruition. That development did not occur, so that license is still available. Sportsplex is asking that the board adopt a resolution designating them as the recipient of this license so they can then apply for it. I am recommending that you accept that.
Any questions for the manager or a motion or?
I'll make a motion that we have a draft resolution here. I'll fill the blanks in. That we approve the liquor license for the Sportsplex.
I'll second.
Motion and support. Any issues? Ernie?
I have a question. I'm trying to figure out where that location, what building they would be in.
They would be, the new Peak Fitness, you know, where that's located, they would be directly behind that.
The new building?
It'd be a new building. It will be a new building that will be constructed behind that building.
Okay.
There'll be a connecting road through that driveway.
I was trying to figure out where that's at, and I couldn't come up with anything.
Yeah, and that would be, that intersection, that access would be the same access that Up the Sky would be utilizing for their development going further west.
So with the additional development, is anyone considering that they're going to have to upgrade that road?
Oh, yes, that is going to be the connecting road that will get across the Brickyard.
In there.
The road has been the contention for a
Mhm.
while.
Okay.
Yes, Up the Sky will be constructing part of that road as part of their project.
So I kind of see this as like you'd have at a bowling alley where you have some kind of a sports thing going on and then the bar is kind of off to the side.
The Sportsplex right now is set up primarily for adolescent and family use. There would be a separated area that would be available for adults while the remainders are enjoying other aspects.
Any food in that too? Or
Yes, yes. There is now. The Sportsplex is currently operating in the city of Marquette. It is the building that's being taken back by the city for their municipal service center. So they'll be moving here.
Dan?
Just going back to that road then, that's going to be, that we've been waiting for forever, it seems, for the access road. Since Up the Sky is now postponed their starting date again another year, is this addition to the Sportsplex is going to move a road, but it's not going to actually get to where we want to be, will we?
Oh, no, not totally. This will be they'll construct the access to their facility, which will also serve Peak Fitness. The Up the Sky project is on hold right now, pending another development that we're meeting with on Thursday of next week.
Okay, do you have a motion? You do.
The clerk retire is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Consider resolution and contract for bonding the 2016 road projects. This was part of our, well, no, maybe just Randy and I talked about this. You might explain it, Randy. how we're gonna save some money on this project.
Yeah, what we're at right now is, as you'll recall, the roads project, the local roads rehabilitation project is a three-phase project, 2015, 2016, 2017. We're separately bonding those because we had different aspects. Part of it was surface restoration, part of it was subsurface restoration reconstruction, and then another part of it was utilities as well. So it was broken into three pieces. We bonded the first part last time. This contract and this resolution are the same documents that you saw last year for the 2015 project, with the Road Commission being bonded through the Road Commission to take advantage of their A++ bonding rating to keep the cost down and the interest rate down. The money is being awarded, the bonds are being sold on behalf of the Road Commission. We bill them for the work that's done, they pay. So we're basically not receiving the funds, they are. Following discussion for the bonding of the second part of it for 2016, a subsequent discussion between the Road Commission and UPEA and myself, along with our bond counsel and our bond attorney, the decision was made, instead of bonding separately 2016 and 2017, we would bond both this year to take advantage of the lowered interest rate and to avoid $81,000 worth of fees that would be paid next year. So that's what's before you this evening. The first set of documents you received with your packet reference $1.95 million. That was for only the 2016 project. The subsequent ones that I sent out to you were for 2.95, which is 16 and 17 combined in a single bonding. And that's what we're recommending that the board accept, is to go forward with that bonding now to realize the lowered interest rate as well as the reduction of fees of about $81,600 that would have occurred 2017. So what you have before you is, first of all, the resolution that is necessary for bond counsel to go forward and put together the bonding materials, and the contract with the Road Commission indicating that they will be the bond recipient agency. We will be receiving the funding from them. And any shortfall that might occur would be the responsibility of the township and not the Road Commission. We are not anticipating any shortfalls.
Just follow up a little bit, as the manager said, it's through the County Road Commission. They don't get the money until they request it, so we don't have to start paying interest until we send a bill to them and they get the money, so.
That's correct.
Everything is done that way.
And the reason the Road Commission is involved is, by statute, the Road Commission is the township's DPW for roads. And that's, they're running this bond as our township DPW with regard to roads and transportation.
Yes, Randy?
This will be two different motions, because you got a resolution and a contract. So I will make a motion to approve
And also, the resolution for the contract will also need to designate signatory.
Okay, I will make a motion that we approve the resolution for the bonds.
Support.
Motion and support. Any questions?
Do we have to identify the signatures on that?
Not on the resolution.
Not on the resolution, that's all board members.
It's the clerk and the board members, yeah. Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes?
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes?
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries. And then we need another motion to approve the contract with the signatories.
I so move we approve the contract with the signatories would be the supervisor and the clerk, or with the clerk or the manager? Which one is it? Clerk or the
Supervisor and clerk, it says.
Supervisor and clerk, okay.
Support that.
Questions? Nope. Okay, go ahead.
That's not a roll call vote.
Oh, it's a contract, yeah, sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
UPEA might want to make, or Dave is from the Road Commission, Road Committee? Okay.
I didn't.
Oh. Okay, we're down to the manager's report. We're doing pretty good.
Very, very briefly. First of all, a reminder, the MTA Capital Conference is coming up April 12th and 13th. March 25th is the deadline for the early bird registrations for any board members that are planning to attend the conference. My understanding is that there is going to be transportation available from the UP. It is a two-day project this year, two-day process. The
Sorry,
say again?
2 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
One of those
there is
killer
that.
trips.
There is that. The alternate would be, if there are multiple board members interested in going, would be to utilize our contract with Enterprise for a low-cost, larger vehicle to travel at your own schedule. The MAPS Van Noom Alternative High School Disc Golf Course that you heard of late last year, we have forwarded them our contribution. They have developed the course on the Van Noom School property. A map is attached on the back of my report. We have disposed of the 2009 Chevy Impala. We were able to sell that for the clean retail price of its value, so that has been gone, and the 2013 is in service. Let's see, the only other two things that I wanted to mention is also in your copy of the MTA magazine that came out, right about in the center, you'll notice that they are talking about the UP Summit is coming up. There is a deadline for applying to that for an early bird rate as well, so if you're interested in going there just outside of Escanaba, take care of that with Lois. And also our audit for our liability insurance occurred just earlier this week. The auditor spent the day with us, Fire Department, Public Works, and the general fund, going through all of our buildings and our facilities, equipment. Preliminary indication from the auditor is that we passed with flying colors, but we'll be getting a written report that I will forward to the board when that's received. Anything else that board members might have a question on or discuss?
Nothing for the manager? Pete?
How's the property going? Any comments on the sale of the property?
Still the ones that I developed he's working on.
All right.
Looks like one is about to close.
Next time we have any electrical work, can we get a timer put on the pavilion light over by the tennis court?
Oh, by the tennis court?
Yeah, that's on 24 hours a day. So we have to get a timer on that so it shuts off.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. I've never paid any attention. I've never noticed that. Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else for the manager? Public comment, we're back up to again. Sure, come on up, Mary.
My name is Mary Davis, 3 Northwood Lane. You know, as I've been sitting here, I'm just amazed at how much time and how many hours you have put into your work and the decision making. And so, you know, I want to compliment you on that, and I want to say thanks for making progress on the Peter White Library contract. And I'm hoping, and I think you probably expect this from me by now, but I see myself here as an advocate for children and children's literacy. So I hope as you're going through the language and the numbers that you'll remember the human element behind this, and especially the children. And when I hear infrastructure, I'm kind of thinking of adding an information highway to children's brains. And you know, we want our children to have a place here in our community and our state, and I think by increasing their education and their understanding, that's the best way that we can keep our children here at home and provide a good standard of living. And so I believe the library is a big part of that. And I think we are the guardians of our children's future. And so that's just something that I wanted to share with you. Again, thank you for all that you're doing and allowing me to be able to speak and just share my feelings about children and their future.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else wish to address us? No comments? Okay. Additional board member comments on from anybody? Pete?
Kirk didn't say anything about it, but this week here we started our recyclable program. This week here it's rigid. Next week it'll be fiber. If you have any discussions, you can call the townships, go to our website, And that, in our office, we have on the counter out there a different description of what they are, what is covered by rigid, what is fiber. So it's starting, so if you find something that's left in your green recyclable thing, that means you got it in the wrong week, so we'll pick it up next week, so. It, you know, go on the website or pick up a folder that it will explain it. Also, time people read or see this, the storm will be over, but you know, towards the end of the year, we're getting these storms, and it's all wet snow. So just be careful, because that's where a lot of the accidents are happening now. Because it's wet, heavy, and it'll drag you into the shoulder or into another car. So be safe. Thank you.
Thanks. Randy, you just have something?
Yeah, April 19th again is that deadline for your petitions if you'd like to run for the board and a Republican or Democrat. The first board meeting in May will be on that Wednesday because the election is now Tuesday, so just so you know that. April 30th, which is Saturday, the Saturday before the election in May, someone will be here, either Lois or myself will be here on Saturday noon to 2 to give out or receive absentee ballots till 2 o'clock, noon to 2 that day. And that's all I have.
Ernie, did you?
I just have a question. There's supposed to be a public hearing coming up this month, and that has to do with Public Works?
It was canceled.
Was
Okay.
that, I think you're thinking about the design standards?
It was-
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it was DWRF.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow that I thought.
Yes, that was scheduled for tomorrow
No one
night.
said anything, so I figured I better ask the question.
I had it on my calendar too and didn't.
It's canceled.
It was in the paper also and is on the website that it was canceled.
I missed both of them.
I did too. John, did you have something?
I'm okay.
No, Dan, Di, you're good? Okay, we need a motion then.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned.
9:07.
9:07.